In the Marine Corps, I was actually communications. When I was enlisted, and I was doing long haul communications and troposcatter communications, which is bouncing off the troposphere. And then while doing that, I got to learn about the ones and zeros, and then I got to learn about encryption, and that really sparked my interest in computers and communications and security and encryption, that type of thing.
As people travel so much, um, did you did you manage to come up with a certain way to communicate to your stakeholders? Is there something that you learned throughout these years that really helped you to communicate it out there to your internal staff?
Don't join the public Wi-Fi's. Then use your cell phone as a hotspot type of thing. Sure, there's risks there too, but generally, the cell phone carriers are doing a much better job than some Wi-Fi hotspot that you don't even know. Wi-Fi's are great. Wi-Fi hotspots are great because they're easy to access, but who's on there? You don't know who owns that. And I showed them, hey, there's all you have to do is rename that hotspot to AT&T Wi-Fi, and if you're an AT&T customer, you'll automatically join it. They just think, oh, it's so easy, it's just right there. Yeah, and then so is your data. You're just giving them all your data, and guess what? They could compromise your computer just by you joining their Wi-Fi, right?
And in your opinion, what's one security control that really moves the needle the most? Or do you think is this an unrealistic way to think about security?
Yeah, I think that still today, we, as employees, as users of these computer systems, are the biggest threat and risk to the data, right? The amount of hacks that are technical in nature that a hacker is breaking in are far fewer than an employee or a person taking action and allowing the break-in. So I think that the biggest control, if you want to call it a control, is really just continuously raising awareness with people.
So our previous guest asked you, in your opinion, what is AI going to look like in 2030?
So in 2030, it's only going to be
Hi, John. Welcome to the Fearless Podcast. Such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I'd love to introduce you to our guest. So today we have John Rojas, head of IT of Air Lease, one of the world's largest aircraft leasing companies. He is a former Marine. John now protects billions of dollars in aircraft assets while managing cyber risk in an industry most people don't think when it comes to security. I'm excited to learn about your experience and what led you to where you are today. But maybe to kick things off, I know that you started your career in Marine Corps. How and why did you pivot to cybersecurity? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or was it something that you just stumbled upon?
So in the Marine Corps, I was actually communications. When I was enlisted, and I was doing long haul communications and troposcatter communications, which is bouncing off the troposphere. And then while doing that, I got to learn about the ones and zeros, and then I got to learn about encryption, and that really sparked my interest in computers and communications and security and encryption, that type of thing. And so it kind of naturally just it became a passion of mine as I started learning how these electronic devices work together and how they communicate over these long distance and then go through the atmosphere that come back down and become data networks and voice networks and how businesses are using the same technology that we were using in the military, just on a larger scale. Actually, the military is all about shoot, move, and communicate, where businesses just need to communicate all the time, so they can communicate with their business partners, their customers, that type of thing. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was actually running IT for LA Fitness, and so that was fun. But I just knew I wanted to do more. So I actually started studying for my project management professional certification, got that, and I got a job back into the Department of Defense with the Missile Defense Agency as a contractor, and I was supporting their space system. So it was a program manager for it was information security at the time, and or information assurance, so they call it. And I was doing that for space systems with this defense agency locally here at the Los Angeles Air Force Base at the time. That gradually moved into project management, getting into more cyber, and then I learned. I had already learned about cybersecurity back in the day, information assurance, and went to a CSSP boot camp. And after the boot camp was over, they said, "You want to take the test?" I said, "I'm not ready for this." I was like overwhelmed by the amount of information that was thrust upon you in that CSSP boot camp, as anybody would be coming right into it. But then while I was doing it, I was like, okay, well, this is great because you really learn a lot about how the systems work, about the encryption algorithms, and how to start to protect these different systems. Which, let's be real, when the internet was invented, it wasn't about security; it was about allowing people to communicate. So I moved into that cyber field or the information security field, and I said, you know what? As a contractor, I think I want to do this. I want to move in there. So, and I was also looking at the futures like this is big. They are really hiring a lot of folks with CSSPs. They're making a regulation that says you must have this certifications in order to get these jobs. So I said, I want to do that. This is where I've been trying to go anyways. This is what I want to do. So I went and passed the test. Got my certifications, and I'm PMP certified. I'm CSSP certified, and so that opened the door for many other jobs. My next job with the Air Force, after my contract was lost from the company I was with, was working at the Air Force Base and running information assurance for the base, which I was responsible for the unclassified network and the classified secret network, and the information assurance for those networks, which it was great for me. So it was a great experience. I had other contractors that worked for me as well. I interfaced with the government civilians throughout the base, all the different functional areas and the different units, as you would say. And so it was a really great experience. When that contract was ending, I actually got a job back in the private sector doing cybersecurity. And so I got into the smaller companies and really started to learn about what smaller companies are doing with cybersecurity, especially when they're under a constrained budget, that type of thing. So it was really trying to prioritize what you need to spend the money on, where you need to focus the most, and really it was try to identify the crown jewels. What was the most important thing to protect, right? So so that's kind of my journey into that. And then as I then went back to the base one more time as a contractor, and I worked for AT&T. And AT&T was supporting the GPS program office. We were under a cybersecurity contract, so it provided cybersecurity expertise to the GPS program office in the Los Angeles Air Force Base as well.
Yeah.
I left there and came to Air Lease, where I am today. I've been here for almost 7 years now, and I run IT and also cybersecurity for the company.
Yeah, that sounds such a fruitful journey. There were so many transitions and so many things going on. And if I were to spot the two trends that were persistent throughout this whole journey, is probably your passion towards looking at the things in a way like actually protection work, and at the same time jumping at the right time when the internet was developed. And as you rightfully said, it wasn't built to be secure in the first place. And
Right.
we see this happening today as well with the new technologies being out there, more on the AI side. And I think this is the shift that is repeating itself. I'd love to learn what do you do at the Air Lease, and what are the things that you do to protect your stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I joined Air Lease, they were very much growing out of the um, startup mentality, right? So they've been around for a little bit, but they still were a startup mentality where it was just hurry up and get it done. Let's get us systems, get us what we want, what we need, and run forward. And so I was brought on to actually bring that cyber experience to the company and apply my knowledge and expertise to securing the company. So the first thing as I'm looking around, I realized that hey, need to build a culture of security, right? We need to start thinking about if I do X, will it end up in a compromise, or is it the risky, or how much risk is involved in all these experiences, right? So we made a lot of changes with endpoints and what employees are able to do, and also really talk to employees about the importance of thinking about security, and really getting them to understand that the risk. We've had conversation with folks and multiple jobs. It's like, hey, hey John, why are you so hung up on the security thing? Why would someone attack me? I'm like, well, because they can, right? If there's nothing to prevent it, they're gonna attack you. So just don't be that lowest hanging fruit. Try to make it a little bit more difficult for them to actually compromise your system and get access to your data and that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for our listeners that might not exactly know what Air Lease does, but Air
Yeah.
Lease owns aircrafts with billions of dollars. What do you think, like, if we were to compare your current experience with the previous experience, what is so unique to the cybersecurity challenges that you're dealing with right now versus the ones that you used to deal in the past?
So coming from the GPS program office, where that program office was responsible for designing and building satellites that actually go into space, and of course, in securing the communications between the satellites and the ground stations. I really got to learn a lot about the ins and outs of that aspect. Whereas at Air Lease, we're not responsible for the security of the aircraft, right? So the manufacturers are responsible for that. Even the owners of the aircraft aren't responsible for that, but they are responsible for making the aircraft airworthy, which requires them to follow FAA regulations and purchase only devices, systems. Everything goes in the aircraft has to be certified by the FAA to be airworthy, and then it can be installed in. So I'm removed from that, or IT, so cyber is removed from that aspect and more focused on the business. So being here, you think, oh, you're dealing with aircraft. Well, no, I'm really not. Actually, I dealt more with aircraft and buses and that type of thing when I was at the at AT&T with GPS program office, because every satellite has a bus that controls it, just like an aircraft or a car, right? So here I'm very focused on the business aspects of cybersecurity. So protecting our intellectual property, our lease rates, our information about our aircraft, our valuations, all those types of things. So it's really not too different from any other business, which is good for me, because I mean, and my team, because we can go do IT just about anywhere. We understand protecting the business is mission number one, so that the business can continue to do business and have to worry about dealing with attackers, dealing with the ransom, that type of thing.
Yeah. Did you find it challenging to pivot to such a specialized sector? I'm sure there are certain challenges that are present, but what really helped you to get up with the speed as you were growing? Because I'm sure there are a lot of CISOs or mid-level security managers that are thinking, okay, which sector do I go to, and how can I position myself to pivot into a different industry?
Yeah, I think that this industry, like a lot of the aircraft or space systems, it's very niche, right? So it's like the people who know it stay in it, and it becomes like a very closed-in network where it's like
Yeah.
airplanes. Oh, let's bring you in. You're a engine engineer, or your engine maintainer. Okay, you're one of the group, right? One of the cool kids. So getting in, starting here from not really knowing much about aircraft, and especially not airliner aircraft, it was a little difficult. It was a little challenging, trying to strike up conversations about leasing aircraft, which I had no idea about. It was difficult. So I had to talk to folks and get them to start to tell me what was important to them. What are the things, the data that they need in order to do the business, and when do they need it? What's the most important thing for a deal? And so you really kind of learn how these folks who travel around the globe, and they're traveling like most of the year. They've got to be able to communicate right back to the corporate office, so that they can say, hey, this is the deal that we're working on. Here are the different factors that we're trying to, we're negotiating back and forth. Is it acceptable to get their deal approved so they can do the shake hand deal and then come back and work up the paperwork with legal and then do the lease drafting, all that thing, and then they send it back and forth, right? So it was really just trying to understand how the business is done so that I can interject security into those business processes.
Yeah, and it looks like you just mentioned so much traveling, and I'm sure you have to deal with many jurisdictions and many regulatory environments. How does this complexity impact your security strategy?
We try to keep it simple, right? I believe in the method of the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, right?
Mm.
And so, we try to not allow whole lot of variety in our systems so that we can actually secure systems. Like if they take our computers, we have enough security and put on our computers that allows them to travel safely and without undue risk, right? So they'll still maintain the same type of web filter systems that we have at the corporate office, and the agents that they need to protect themselves, the antivirus and the managed detect respond vendor agent, that type of stuff, right? So it's very similar to other companies. I just feel like in this industry, more than others that I've seen, folks are just traveling a lot, especially the folks that in marketing and that type of thing that go out and meet these airlines because we're global, right? We don't just deal with American, airlines. We go out everywhere throughout the world, and so the folks travel in some less hospitable places, and they have to be careful and about joining Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi that's out there at the airport or airport and also hotel Wi-Fi's because they're not secure. So we provide them enough security to have a VPN where they can encrypt their traffic and that type of thing. And we talk about shoulder surfing, not working in a public place, not having sensitive conversations about lease rates or where you're going to next or who you're talking to in a public place where that can be shared with people who are trying to do us harm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, as people travel so much, um, did you did you manage to come up with a certain way to communicate to your stakeholders? Hey, this is the right way to travel and to stay secure digitally. Is there something that you learned throughout these years that really helped you to communicate it out there to your internal staff? And if it was, I'm sure that it's also applicable to other industries where right now we are a global world and everyone is traveling. But I think in your case, it just probably goes to the extreme level.
Yeah, it's the same things that we tell everybody about, like joining the public Wi-Fi's. Don't join the public Wi-Fi's. Then use your cell phone as a hotspot type of thing. Sure, there's risks there too, but generally, the cell phone carriers are doing a much better job than some Wi-Fi hotspot that you don't even know. I actually did a mandatory annual cybersecurity training for my entire company. Every single employee had to get trained every single year, and we talked through it. I'd give them the spiel about, hey, be careful these Wi-Fi's. Wi-Fi's are great. Wi-Fi hotspots are great because they're easy to access, but who's on there? You don't know who owns that. And I showed them, hey, there's all they have to do is rename that hotspot to AT&T Wi-Fi, and if you're an AT&T customer, you'll automatically join it. So the little things that people don't think about. They just think, oh, it's so easy. It's just right there. Yeah, and then so is your data. You're just giving them all your data, and guess what? They could compromise your computer just by you joining their Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah, yeah. Those little tricks, they really go in a long way because you really don't think about like all of these things while you're in such an urgent situation and you just want to get connected as soon as possible.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the TV show Mr. Robot, where he was able to sit down and use that free Wi-Fi to actually compromise the store owner because the store owner was doing bad things. But it goes both ways, right? It could be any other patron in that business, or someone at the airport or the hotel or that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you mentioned that dealing with lots of sensitive data is something that you really focus on, and that's probably the main focus when it comes to security. How do we make sure that things that we have stay secure? And given the rise of all the AI tools, SaaS, how you're approaching the browser security and how you're really going about protecting all of those things.
So yeah, it's funny you mentioned the accessing the data. I just of course think about the cybersecurity triad: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Well, if folks can't get to the data that they need in order to do business, then security is on the way, and they're going to bypass the security, or they're going to do other things. So we need them to be able to access the websites that they need access to, which is like the manufacturer, the aircraft manufacturers, the business partners that actually maintain the aircraft, the parts manufacturers. So all these different business partners have their own websites, their own portals that they may have to log into and download data. So there's it's two ways. It's going out and trying to retrieve data, bring it in, and then share data with our business partners in a secure manner. Well, we created an internal system, and so that you can't share externally, but you can confidently share data by going, okay, this is the data that I want to share with my external partner. I'm going to move it to this site that we know is going external. So it's a conscious thought. If they're thinking about security, yes, this is safe. I know what data this is. I know the person that I'm going to share this data with because I'm going to send them a secure link to that data on our externally facing site, right? So that type of thing. As far as browser security, we manage our browsers. We limit the quantity of browsers that people can use on our systems, and then we control those so that we have an understanding of, yes, they're being patched, that no, they don't have a bunch of plugins, and those types of things. And we also, like I was telling you before, when people travel, they have our web filter system on, or maybe I didn't say this before, but we have our own web filter system on the computer that actually manages to filter out the malicious content, only allow access to sites that fall into approved categories, that type of thing. So they're literally traveling with a workstation that is corporate level security everywhere they go. So and that was we were doing that before COVID, when everyone went remote. Like, hey, these folks need to be protected no matter where they go. So we'll provide them with a laptop that has corporate level firewall or internet firewall security on the systems that it's on, that will that they will protect their data and ensure that if they do join a Wi-Fi or public Wi-Fi, a malicious Wi-Fi, that at least the data is encrypted, and it's going to be much harder for the a criminal to capture that data.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to double down on malicious extensions and plugins
Yeah.
that you mentioned, because this is really a predominant risk these days. How do you really go about making sure that no one goes and installs extensions that they seem most helpful, but then don't really end up being helpful?
So we actually manage our browsers via Intune. So Microsoft Intune can do that, and you actually can block extensions from being installed. And then when folks want to install an extension, they can contact IT, and then we'll do an assessment on it. What does the extension do? Does it come from a valid source? That type of thing, and then make a risk-based decision on whether to allow it or not.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is a great approach to really identify what's done, what's not done, because right now with overwhelming access to so many new tools, it becomes a little bit trickier.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
No, 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 please.
And when it comes to chatbots and let's say ChatGPT, Claude, do you do you feel bullish around this tech, and do you encourage your users to actually use it?
So in my mind, and then the folks here at the company, we believe that innovation is great. However, it has a lot of risk. So we actually published a AI policy of what you should and shouldn't do. We did it quite some time ago, so it doesn't include all the new AI types, but it was very generic to say that, hey, don't put sensitive information into these AIs because it could leak to the public. And what I did in order to kind of know what was going on. So at the beginning of when I first got here, we had no idea, no insight into what folks were doing with the website, that type of thing. So we actually have tools in place now where we can see when someone navigates to an AI website or uploads documents, that type of thing, so that we can train them. And it's about training. It's about education. Most people, 99% of the folks aren't trying to do anything malicious. They're just trying to do their job, or they're curious, so they want to do things. So when we identify someone who's uploading something to an AI, we'll reach out to them and say, hey, we see what you're doing. Why are you doing this? What's the business reason for this? And then if they actually have a good, valid business reason, we say, okay, hey, that's great. We want you to innovate, but don't use business data. Use your personal data to learn these new AI tools. But also, we're implementing our own AI internally, and we have a whole training program for that. So come over here, get training, and then we'll give you a license, and then you can use AI over here and not in the public realm. And if you want to do the videos or the sound AI, whatever, your pictures and video, you can do it on your own time with your own data. Just realize that anything you put in AI, it's now in the public realm and anyone can access it. So that seems to be going pretty good. We don't have very many repeat offenders. So people are really trying to understand this AI thing, especially when it's everywhere. It's in the news, and everyone's saying you have to use it or you're going to be left behind. And so people are like, well, what is it? How do I use it? What is it for?
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing when there is already pre-created strategy of at least the direction that you want to go to. And as you said, that not many people want to be repeat offenders. And if they're repeat offenders, then you're most likely going to know that it is probably intentional.
Yep,
Um,
exactly. And then there's a policy. We always report them back to, or point them back to the HR policy. Say, here's the HR policy on AI use. You're not following it, so now HR has to get involved. Unfortunately, that comes with the job in security. Right? Sometimes you got to be the police, as they like to say. Oh, you're just the police. But no, we're trying to protect the business. That's what it's all
yeah,
about. Making sure
yeah.
that the business is here so that you have a job. So we're actually protecting you.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to talk a little bit more about your leadership, John. And I know that you actually have two hats as both CIO and a CISO.
Right.
Um, I'm wondering what's your philosophy on the structure, and how do you really balance enabling the business mindset and also protecting the business mindset?
So I believe in people first. I think that if you treat people with respect and you give them the benefit of the doubt, you'll find that 99% of the time that people are just trying to do better, and sometimes they just don't think things through all the way. So it's about training. It's about having the discussions with people about cybersecurity and what the safer way to do things is, and to try to explain to them what's happening. What they don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So here's what's happening around you. Someone's always trying to access your account. Like, really? Someone's trying to log into my account all the time. So it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I'm like, and I tell them, I said, yeah, did you know that you were in Russia on this day, and then you were in Singapore the next day, and then you were in Los Angeles the day after that, and like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, all these logins are coming from all over the place. Like, really? Yes. Does that mean that the attacker was in those places? No, not necessarily. Or they just they compromise other computers, and they can write a script, and they can try to log into your account. Like, oh. So we got talking about that, and then they said, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, if you ever receive an MFA pop up and you weren't logging into something, you should be very
Mhm.
concerned. You should call us right away and say, hey, this is happening, so that we can go investigate. And there's cases where, like, your computer is sitting in the office when you're traveling and might be logging in, and then all of a sudden you get MFA'd, right? So it's okay, so we can figure those out. But otherwise, someone might have guessed your password, and it's time for you to change your password. Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
They, prob-
great.
they probably would be wishing that they're the ones traveling between all of these places that you just mentioned, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty interesting that that people just don't they don't realize, they don't look at logs like we do. So it's like they just don't know. So
mm,
once you educate folks, that they get a little nervous at first, and then you go like, everything's okay. This is a normal thing. Just be mindful of that, so that if you get some random pop up, just contact us. Don't freak out. Just contact us and stay calm.
yeah. Yeah. And how do you generally avoid the trap where security may lose argument in favor of business velocity?
That's a tough one. So when I first arrived, I was given the mandate, hey, you're going to implement security, right? So I like to say that I did a lot of things to the business in those first, few years, and then I tapered it off, and then I started doing things for the business, right? So security, unfortunately, it's a speed bump, right? Because when people start operating too fast, they don't quite think all the way through things, like reading emails quickly or reading emails while driving, or eating reading emails while eating dinner and talking to your kids, and then clicking on a link, because you thought it was something really important that you needed to do that. But so a lot of it's just that it really is kind of slowing people down and saying, hey, take a few seconds to think about what you're doing. Think about it if the situation really needs you to take action on this email right now, or if it's on the phone. Well, how small is the font on the phone compared to your computer? Yeah, I've been told numerous times. Yeah, John, I really should just waited to read that email on my computer, and I would have seen that it was phishing. I'm like, okay, no, we're learning. Yes, that's right. Or I really shouldn't have checked my emails while I was driving in the car. But yeah, that's probably a good thing too. But people just do what they do. They're trying to be efficient and make the best use of their time. And unfortunately, we all fall in that trap. So again, avoiding the trap. There's ways to avoid some of the traps, but at the same time, you have to realize that without the business, there's no reason for security. The most secure computer is one that's in a brick building with no windows, no doors, and no electricity, but it's just sitting there, not able to be used, right?
Nothing
So
secure.
yeah, exactly. So you have to weigh the risk with your operations, right? There's always going to be risk.
Yeah, and I think all these challenges that you just brought up, they just really highlight how interdependent right now our personal life is and our work life. It just becomes way too convenient to open something on your phone and really just press a certain link. And it's becoming, I guess, with each year harder and harder to really draw that boundary, and it just becomes more mushed all over the place.
Oh, definitely, especially with social media, and we're all, if we're on our phones scrolling through, you know, X or whatever else, or Snapchat or whatever else, and you get an email that pops up, you get the alert. Oh, I got to read that email right now because it's already in your phone. You already or on your hand. You're already staring at it, and you just do the quick thing. You're just so used to doing things quickly, you know. It's hard to slow down that click. We need like a speed bump for the phone to like, well, maybe I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that would be a good, great idea for speed bump for.
Yeah, right. What if you had it? Are you sure you want to push this email? Oh, okay, maybe I can wait till later to read that email. Yeah.
Exactly. And in your opinion, what's one security control that really moves the needle the most? Or do you think is this an unrealistic way to think about security?
Yeah, I think that still today, we, as employees, as users of these computer systems, are the biggest threat and risk to the data, right? Uh, the amount of hacks that are technical in nature that a hacker is breaking in are far fewer than an employee or a person taking action and allowing the break in. So I think that the biggest control, if you want to call it a control, is really just continuously raising awareness with people. I try to send monthly, maybe every other week or every other 2 3 weeks, emails to folks to say, hey, tidbits, what's going on in cybersecurity. We use Know Before will send out tips as well. I kind of feel like sometimes they get lost in the email, madness, the email madness that they have all these emails to read and try to get through. I'm hoping that at least they reach some people that they might think, okay, hey, that's kind of interesting story. Let's read about that. Oh, let's think about emails that I'm getting, right? That type of thing. And then when people fail phishing exercises, they get additional training and make them stop. Then they get that. That's kind of the road or the speed bump for them. Like, hey, you're going really fast, so you kind of did something bad there. So maybe go take a little break and slow down and take the training. Yes, you already know what it's going to say to you, but take it. Understand. Okay, yeah, it was bad. Let's
Yeah.
think more about it in the future. Try to slow people down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's like with philosophy, most people do understand, but certain things just have to be repeated more and
Yes,
more just to really have it ingrained in your system. Yeah.
absolutely.
If you were advising a new colleague stepping into aircraft leasing industry or let's say aviation sector, uh, what's one thing about this industry security landscape that you absolutely need to understand?
I mean, know the bare basics about flight, I guess. Luckily for me, I'm a fan of aircraft, military aircraft, all kinds of aircraft. But I really didn't get into the bigger airplanes, the Boeings, the Airbuses. So there's a lot of knowledge to gain there, and I don't know, but I mean, I understand flight, and I've flown before, so we've never flown. This kind of interesting. It's kind of hard to get into, but read about it. It's not that hard to pick up a book. Aircraft leasing, on the other hand, it's hard to understand because not a lot of people understand that it's out there. But it relates back to vehicle leasing, car leasing, or any other I would say asset, but not, like tractor leasing. It happens everywhere. It's the same idea, just with now you have a $50 million aircraft that you're leasing, that type of thing. So it's just higher capital. So the aircraft leasing industry is very interesting, and I would definitely tell people, hey, learn more about this industry because it's not going away. A lot of these, everyone just assumes that these big airlines buy their aircraft when they don't. It's I'm sorry, the airline industry itself. It struggles from time to time, right? So there's seasons for the aircraft or the airline industry, so they get cash light, so they want to lease their aircraft instead of buy it, so they don't have to make these huge payments. So that's one way that they can do it is by leasing them from these financial companies that lease aircraft. So
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting to understand how it's all connected because, as you said, that there are buying cycles, there are probably leasing cycles as well,
yeah,
and in fact, it's also likely to influence the security because, let's say, whenever it is the busiest period, this is probably creates the best window of opportunity for attackers to target someone.
yeah.
So it's all about business cycles in the
Oh,
end.
absolutely. And I would even say, well, I just thought of one more point. I would say focus more on the banking and finance side than the aircraft, because honestly, that's what the aircraft lessors are, right? They're banks. They're with capital to go buy these aircraft to then lease them out, right? And then the maintenance or the operations of the lease is really about the aircraft. And so you have to know that you have the engineers, you have to know the aircraft at that point. But it's really the financial arm is key for the aircraft lessors.
Yeah, I'm sure all of these tips will be extremely helpful because it's such an intriguing industry, and you know that so much of today's world really depends on this industry because without it, I highly doubt that airlines will go ahead and just buy all their planes.
Oh yeah.
So it's very interesting to know how the inside of this industry works from the security perspective. John, we have this tradition on our podcast where previous guests would ask questions to the next guest. So our previous guest asked you, in your opinion, what is AI going to look like in 2030?
So in 2030, it's only going to be what, five? Okay, let's call it 4 more years older. So I still think that AI is still like a little kid, right? It's learning, it's trying. It's growing fast. I mean, we grow fast when we're little, and every year seems like you grow so much faster. But I think it'll be more like a teenager than the small middle or elementary school kid at this point, right? So for example, AI makes a lot of mistakes. It is easily persuaded to provide wrong or incorrect information based on something that it saw that it thought was factual. So as it matures, I think that the guardrails we start to develop into it will help it mature into a an application that asks the question, hey, is this verified, or what is the source of this, before I come back and say, yeah, I'm certain about this. So I think it'll get better. I keep seeing this example of AI adding a fourth tower to the hotel in Singapore, and I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it's like three big
Marina
towers. You know what it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
What was it again? I'm sorry.
Marina Bay Sands.
There you go. Right. So if you ask AI to draw a picture of it, it might draw it with four towers, because they were talking about, or there was talk on the internet about building a fourth tower. Never happened, but yet it provides that picture to you. So AI itself has a lot of maturing to do. AI business cases have an extreme amount of maturing to do. I know of some folks who are building AI internally. They're spending millions and millions of dollars for the infrastructure to do so, but they have a goal in mind. They have a business case in mind. Whereas for the administrative or business office use, I see it very slow going. I'm talking to a lot of peers, and they're not seeing it burst out. So I think that for most folks in 2030, AI may be a teenager. It might be pretty good, maybe with a little less attitude, but we'll see, unless you're using like Grok, or, for example, you want the attitude, right? So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see what happens. I am not on the of the camp that jump right in and have your business use it, because I don't think it's going to provide the data, or the correct data, and the calculations that are going to replace humans. Not just yet, right? I think we have some time to figure that out, and then maybe eventually in 2040. Maybe I'm way off here, but 2040 we're doing more of AI double checking versus AI teaching, right? It's just like, okay,
Mm.
just making sure that it's running correctly, it's running the right processes, it's doing the checks to make sure that the data that it gives back to the business is reliable.
Yeah. So do you think by 2040 it will grow to become a mature adult already aware of cybersecurity?
I don't. Maybe as long as the AI on the other side doesn't develop so much faster as it is now to counter the AI in cybersecurity, right? It
Makes
seems like we're
sense.
always, as a defense, it's always harder to be in defense than it is to be in offense, because the offense only has to be right once, or you have to be right all the time, right? So it's a tough thing to do, and the
But
best
fair
defense in my mind is a good offense. So
enough. Yeah, fair. Yeah, it's never a fair match when it comes to,
it's
attackers and
not.
defenders.
They have all the time in the world, right? Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, yeah. What question would you like to ask to our next guest?
That's a tough question. um, I'm stuck on the AI now all of a sudden. um, I'll flip the AI question on its head and say, what what job would you not want to see AI doing in the future, right? So essentially, what kind of work would you like to reserve for humans versus the software, the AI to do?
Yeah, this is a good question. And I think because we're going to be interviewing security leader, they're probably going to be thinking about the insecurity realm. So it
Right.
would be interesting to know which one they pick. Hopefully it's CISO.
Right. Well, and of course, you wouldn't want to have a human go back looking at logs all the time. I mean, that's it. That's what AI is good for, as long as you can teach it and it learns correctly. But again, it's going to take a lot of human interaction for quite some time, until it's maybe not necessarily a teenager, but maybe the 20 or 30-year-old, and now understands the context behind it, and can start to pick out the variables that really don't make sense.
Hmm. Yeah, indeed. Well, John, it was so great to learn your journey, how you gotten into this space, because I don't think many people really talk about at conferences enough about the Air Lease industry in general. But it's so fascinating, and it is so important to the transportation, world transportation that exists today, that it's so interesting to know what are the certain skill sets that need to be developed and what is the right approach that you have to adopt when once you look into the space. As you said, all of this is dependent on business cycles, and data is something that is the focus of the industry, and it's very fascinating space, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners in the future might consider going into this space because it involves a lot of travel. uh,
Well, it depends on the job that you do, of course, right? I mean, it really is the best kept secret. It's a great industry. They're trying. I don't know how if it's growing or consolidating. It's like you said, there's business cycles. Right now, I think the industry is starting to consolidate a little bit more. So it's not really growing too much, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future,
yeah, we'll see what
especially
happens.
with electronic aviation and eVTOLs and all that type of stuff. So maybe instead of people buying these aircraft, they'll lease them out, and just like cars, and that's how we are doing transportation in the future. We shall see.
Exactly. Exactly. And it would be interesting to, reconnect in the future and see where air leasing industry is standing, I don't know, in 5 years' time, same as AI, how much of an adult it becomes.
Yeah.
And it
So
would be,
driving at that point, right? Well, it's already driving, I guess. We have the driverless Ubers and all that stuff. So
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, John, thank you so much for joining the Fearless podcast. I really enjoyed this.
thank you very much. I did as well.